The cry in the cell sound came at night, a soft weak cry that barely reached the ears of the young alien guard named Kale. He was patrolling the lower levels of the Council's secret facility, located beneath the icy crust of the moon Eltrax. Kale had never liked this assignment, and he often avoided walking near the lower cells, because the air there felt heavy like guilt or something old or something angry tonight. However, the shifts had changed, and he had no choice. He moved quietly past the locked doors with his scanner until he heard it again, a faint voice, not loud, not screaming. Just a broken whisper, "Help, please help me." Kale stopped frozen. His skin went cold. He looked around. The corridor empty and dark, then stepped closer to the door from which the sound came. His scanner pinged the label, read Subject 626. Kale frowned. Human subjects were banned long ago after the Accord of Iona. Yet here one was held deep underground with no logs, no access, no medical notes. Curiosity and fear battled inside him. He pressed a key and opened the small viewport. The stench hit him. First sweat, fear, blood, then his eyes adjusted to the dim red light inside, and he saw a child, small, frail, arms covered in bruises, ribs visible, eyes too tired to be afraid anymore. The child blinked once slowly, then tried to speak again. "Help me." Kale stumbled back from the door. His mind raced. How was this allowed? He had joined the Galactic Council Defense Forces to keep peace, not to guard tortured children. He turned to walk away, but the child spoke again, not with words this time, but something deeper. Kale felt it inside his skull, like a message that wasn't meant for him, but echoed through him. "They will come," the child said, not out loud, but within, "and when they do, nothing will remain." Kale fell to one knee, clutching his head. The air shimmered for a moment, then went still again. He looked back through the view port. The child was lying still, eyes closed. Again he pressed a button on his wrist and tried to call command, but his signal jammed. Strange interference. None of this made sense. Kale stood breathing hard and backed away from the cell. He had to report this, he had to tell someone, but as he turned and ran, he didn't see the tiny hidden transmitter embedded in the wall above the child. It blinked once and sent a pulse through subspace, a whisper of pain and warning sent far, far away. On the other side of the galaxy, near the edge of the Orion Belt, a human listening station picked up the pulse. At first the crew thought it was a glitch, but then they analyzed the waveform, and silence fell. The technician turned slowly to the officer on duty and handed him a transcript. It wasn't just a signal, it was a message in human code, an ancient emergency call, one that had not been used in over 100 years. The message was 6 words only: tortured child, request justice, send fire. The officer didn't speak. He simply picked up the red communicator that had not been touched in decades and sent the alert to Earth command. The wheels of war began to move silently, like ghosts awakening after a long slumber. No headlines, no speeches, no debates, just names on black files marked Ashfall. Kale, meanwhile, returned to his post, but something in him had changed. He could still hear the child's words, echoing deep within him, not of hate, not of anger, but of a promise, a warning. He didn't understand what the humans would do, but he knew it would not be quiet. Far above, in the cold vacuum of space, one of Earth's silent orbiting defense platforms received the message, and without a word, it opened its ancient encrypted port and activated a forgotten protocol. Operation Silent Flame. Earth did not scream, Earth did not threaten, Earth simply began to move. And when Earth moves, the stars watch. The child inside the cell curled into the corner, his eyes fluttering, half awake, half broken. He had no name, only numbers burned into his arm. His memories were shattered, his voice nearly gone, but his mind still worked, and somewhere deep within it, a link now pulsed, connected to something vast, something vengeful, something human. And far, far away on Mars, a man in a black uniform stepped onto a landing pad, his face grim, his voice quiet as he said, "Prepare the fleet. We found one of our children, and if they hurt him, they will understand why Earth was once feared." The message reaches Earth. Skies above Earth were clear as always, the stars watching quietly, but down below, under the Pacific Ocean, in the deepest level of a hidden command bunker, alarms began to pulse, not with sirens, but with light, cold red light that signaled something far older than any military alert system, a protocol from the first interstellar war, a signal from the age when humanity stood alone against the galaxy and survived. The general in charge of this bunker, known only as Marshal Reed, stepped forward and looked at the blinking terminal. No one spoke around him. The technicians sat still, their hands on keyboards, waiting for his order. The signal had been verified again and again: tortured child, request justice, send fire. Those were the words, burned into the old code words reserved only for the most sacred response. Someone had touched a human child. Someone had crossed the final line. The Marshal gave one nod and said, "Wake the council," but not the political council. He meant the real one, The one made of survivors, warriors, scientists, and ghosts of wars so old they were not in public history books. The holo screens activated at once, beaming the faces of men and women who had not been seen in years. Admiral Cora appeared from the Luna Fleet base, her eyes already knowing. Director Vale joined from Titan Intelligence Division, a shadow even within Earth's secret world. And last came General Ash of Ashfall Division, his name whispered in alien nightmares all around the galaxy. The Marshal did not speak at first. He simply shared the file showing the cry of the human child, the whispers, the bruises, the underground lab, the unknown council moon, and the signal that had come from it. When the footage ended, there was silence, not out of confusion, but out of memory, because each one of them remembered what Earth used to be when it was feared, and why they had buried that fear for peace. General Ash was the first to speak, his voice calm and cold. The last time they tortured one of our children, we made a sun go dark. Do you want us to remind them again? The Marshal nodded once. Activate Ashfall. Prepare for rapid strike protocol. Do not wait for politics. Do not wait for answers. Just go and bring that child home. And if they stop you, leave nothing standing within ours. Secret docks in Antarctica opened, revealing black warships without names or numbers, ghost ships of legend crewed by humans born in silence, raised in war, trained in pain. They called themselves Ashfall because they only came when the fire had already started. They did not march. They did not boast. They simply left the planet like arrows launched by grief in orbit. Earth's satellites moved slightly, revealing weapons buried beneath ice and metal. The world did not speak. The governments were silent. The people went on with their lives, unaware that Earth had been wounded again, and Earth does not bleed alone. Deep in the fleet command ship, a young captain named Juno sat in front of a terminal, replaying the child's whisper again and again. Her hands clenched every time she heard the weak voice asking for help. She had once been like that child, broken, lost, taken by a council raid when she was 10, but Earth had found her and raised her into vengeance. Now she would return the favor. She turned to her team, Ashfall commandos, known only by codenames Wolf, Iron Veil, Shade. Every one of them had lost someone. Every one of them had waited for this day. They were not here for glory. They were here for the child. Juno stood slowly and said, "No mercy, no warning. We go silent and we leave fire." They nodded as one. The stars outside watched them pass, cold and distant. But even the void seemed to shiver as Earth's fleet tore through hyperspace, headed for the edge of council space. Back on Earth, the Marshal watched their path, then turned to Director Vale and said, "Leak it." Vale raised an eyebrow. "You want me to leak classified information?" The Marshal looked at him and replied, "Not to humans. Leak it to the aliens. Leak the footage. Show them what they did to our child. Let them decide if they still want to stand with the council or if they would rather run." Director Vale did not ask questions. He simply activated 10 shadow channels and spread the images across alien communication webs. The video of the bruised child, the whisper, the numbers carved into his skin, and the silence after millions watched it in shock. Billions began to whisper, then shout, then scream. Entire species that once feared Earth now saw it rising again, not in anger, but in heartbreak. And that was far more terrifying, because when Earth rises in rage, it brings pain. But when it rises in sorrow, it brings the end on the council worlds. Panic began to grow. Protests broke out. Ships were locked down and military stations doubled security. Because even though no statement had come from Earth, every leader, every soldier, every citizen across the stars knew what came next when a human child is hurt. Earth does not forgive. Earth does not forget. Earth answers in fire and silence. Ashfall unleashed. The void of space did not greet them warmly as the Ashfall fleet exited hyperspace. It remained cold and silent, uncaring of the fire that now moved through its vast emptiness. The lead ship, named Vengeance, drifted for a moment, scanning the nearby planet, a minor council world known as Virelia, a planet officially listed as agricultural, peaceful, known for exports of fruit and silk and poetry. But the scans revealed something else. Buried beneath farms and fake villages was a massive underground complex, shielded, cloaked, humming with energy, and filled with screams. The ship's AI confirmed biosignatures. Over 500 human children kept in locked chambers, behind force fields and machinery designed not for healing, but for experimentation. The commandos inside Vengeance stood ready, their eyes hard, their armor black without symbols. They were not here for honor. They were here to do what must be done. Juno stood before them, her voice steady as steel. "Today we do not warn, we do not speak, we do not wait. We go and we get our children, and we burn whatever stands in the way." She pointed toward the planet, and the drop pods opened silently in the airless dark. The Ashfall team launched downward like black meteors, cutting through the clouds. Within seconds they landed outside a false farmhouse. The illusion shimmered, then vanished, revealing steel towers and guard turrets. But it was too late for defense. Wolf kicked in the main door, throwing a shock grenade. Inside, an Iron followed behind, clearing the corridor with a wide energy burst. The guards tried to fight, but they were not soldiers, only scientists wearing guns, men and women, who had not expected Earth to respond so quickly, so brutally. Within minutes, Ashfall breached the inner core and found the first chamber behind glass and force fields, rows of cages, each containing a child, some crying, some silent, most too weak to even react. At first glance they seemed broken, but as the human soldiers approached, one child reached out his hand and whispered the words, "Thank you." And those two words made everything explode inside the team. Even Iron, who had not spoken since losing his daughter on Krellis Prime, wiped his visor and whispered, "We are too late." But Juno stepped forward and said, "No, we are right on time." She activated her wristpad and sent a live stream of the chambers straight to Earth. And beyond, every major system in the galaxy now saw the truth. No more lies, no more secrets. Only pain and betrayal and the screams of children trapped in metal cells. Panic swept through the council worlds faster than light, but it was already too late, because the video had reached the public and riots erupted on 15 planets in 1 hour. Back on Virelia, the Ashfall team began evacuating the children, carrying them gently, some walking, others unconscious, but all alive. Then came the scream. Not from a child, but from the deep core, a siren warning that a purge was initiated. The council had activated the base's destruction protocol. They would rather erase their crimes than face the truth. Juno cursed and ordered evacuation, but the doors began to seal. Iron stayed behind to hold them open, using his exosuit to rip metal from the walls, yelling, "Go, go, go," as the heat behind him grew brighter and redder. Finally, the last child was out, and the base exploded in a silent, fiery wave, turning the farms and silk fields into ash. The orbiting fleet watched and recorded everything. No words, just images and pain. Earth Command received the data, and the Marshal watched quietly, then sent one command to the Galactic net: upload it all. The truth must be known. And the truth was raw, the truth was ugly, the truth was human children, stolen, hidden, tortured, and now freed by shadows who had been waiting in silence for justice. The council tried to spin the story, calling it the act of a rogue science wing, an isolated crime. But no one believed them, not anymore. Too many lies, too many scars. The video of Iron carrying two children through fire became a symbol shared across alien networks, tagged with one word: Ashfall. Soon other species began to speak up, to admitting they had lost children or family to secret council programs. Fear turned to fury as the galaxy began to shake, not from war, but from truth. And above all, from the realization that Earth had not grown weak. Earth had simply chosen peace. And when peace was broken, Earth had returned, not with speeches or warnings, but with fire, with soldiers whose hearts were carved with loss, and with warships that bore no name, only purpose. As the last Ashfall ship returned from Virelia, the rescued children now resting safe in medbase, Juno looked out the viewport and whispered, "They opened the door. Now we finish what they started." Burning of the First World Council chamber was not made for fear. It had been built with marble and gold, with walls that stretched into the sky and windows that looked down on 10 million lights across the capital planet of Threxia, a world of pride, a world of power, the heart of the Galactic Council. But tonight the lights flickered, the windows trembled, and the marble walls no longer felt strong. The leaders sat around a long obsidian table, their faces pale, their eyes full of denial. Not one of them spoke about the human fleet, not one of them said the name Ashfall, not yet. Instead, they argued about politics, about trade, about diplomacy, until one trembling aide ran through the great doors, breathless and pale, and held up a screen with shaking hands. One word burned across it: vengeance. The live feed began. It showed the world of Drenner, once a council research colony, its skies now glowing red, its oceans boiling, its cities gone. The first human fleet had arrived above Drenner 2 hours earlier. They had sent no transmission, they had given no ultimatum, they had simply come and waited, as if daring the council to speak first. On the surface, the scientists had tried to escape, their ships scattered like leaves in a storm, but the Ashfall drones had already jammed their signals and locked their gates. The people screamed for help, but no help came. The sky turned black and then silver as the orbital cannons aligned, and the bombardment began, not with nuclear fire, not with plasma, just clean kinetic rods dropped from orbit one by one. Each impact shook the world like a drum. Each blast erased a building, erased a memory, erased a lie. And high above, the human commander known only as Vale stood silently watching, no expression, no joy, only purpose. Beside him the young Captain Juno stood as well, her voice low and steady as she said, "Drenner was their first cage, let it be the first fire." Vale nodded once, then gave the order, "Continue." Every single structure connected to the council Every lab, every port, every station burned one by one until the surface was silent and dead. Not a single human ship had taken damage, not a single soldier had touched the ground. It had all been done from above, and the message was clear: this was not conquest. This was retribution, and the galaxy watched in silence as the footage streamed across every planet, every spaceport, every network. Some cheered, some wept, some hid, but all of them understood. Something had changed. Earth had returned, not with banners or flags, but with justice, the old justice, the kind that leaves nothing behind on Threxia. The council leaders sat in silence, their mouths open, their eyes wide. They had thought the humans soft, fragile, obsessed with peace and art and silence. But they had forgotten something. Peace for humans was a choice. And when that choice was taken from them, they became something else, something that does not beg, something that does not negotiate, something that simply ends threats and buries them beneath ash. One of the council leaders stood trembling, his voice barely above a whisper. They only did this for one child, and the others nodded, not with courage but with fear. If they did this for one, what will they do for 5? What will they do if they find out about the other labs, about the deeper programs, about the vanished colonies? Back on the human fleet, Juno stood before the comm station and activated a direct channel, not encrypted, not secret, but wide open to all species and all frequencies. Her face appeared across the stars, calm, cold, determined. She said, "We found one of our children tortured, broken, and left to die, and for that, we answered. For that, we burned one world, and this is only the beginning. If there are others, if there are more crimes, if there are more hidden screams, we will find them, and we will respond. We will not wait for apologies. We will not listen to lies. We will do what must be done because we are human, and we do not forget." She ended the broadcast and walked away, leaving the stars to echo her words across the galaxy. The council tried to block the signal, but it was too late. It had already been copied, re-uploaded, reshared in 10,000 languages. Every species now faced a choice: stand with the council and risk the fire, or stand with the truth and beg for forgiveness. Some planets began to switch sides, not for power but for survival. The name Ashfall became a warning, a whisper, a shield. Some planets even sent messages to Earth, offering their own files, their own secrets, their own regrets in hopes of mercy. But Earth did not respond, not yet. The fleet simply moved to the next world, quiet and slow and terrible, and every planet it passed trembled. Because now the stars were no longer safe. Now justice moved through the galaxy, not on wings of light, but on silent black ships with no names, only fury, only memory, only pain, only human's child speaks inside the medical bay of the lead Ashfall ship. The lights were soft, the walls quiet, the machines gentle, but the silence inside the room was not peaceful. It was heavy, the kind of silence that wraps around pain like a shadow. The human child lay on a recovery bed, thin, pale skin covered in bruises, hair cut unevenly, eyes sunken and distant. He had no name, only a number: 626. Burned into his arm by the council lab. He had not spoken in hours, not since the escape from the facility, not since iron had carried him through smoke and flame. The doctors had done what they could, fixed the bones, healed the skin, balanced the nerves, but something deeper remained untouched. Juno sat beside his bed, her armor stripped away, her face tired, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from rage and sorrow. She had looked into the eyes of the child and seen something she could never forget, the same emptiness she had carried as a girl after her own rescue all those years ago. The same darkness that does not scream, it waits and watches and remembers. The boy opened his eyes slowly, his lips dry, his throat too sore to speak, but he tried, and Juno leaned closer, placing a water tube to his mouth. He drank, and then whispered something that made her still. "I remember all of them," he said. She nodded slowly. "Do you want to tell us who they were?" He shook his head, his voice rasping. "I want to tell everyone. I want them to see what they did to me and the others." Juno activated the bedside console and called the comm station, linking the boy directly to Earth Command and to every major galactic network. She asked him one more time, "Are you sure?" The child stared at the ceiling, then at the stars outside the small window, and said, "They hurt me, and they laughed." No more silence. "I want them to know my name, my pain, and my truth." He leaned forward, his voice shaking but steady. "My name is Kale, not the guard, not the alien me. They took it from me, they erased it. But I remember now, Kale. My mother whispered it before they took her. I do not know if she lives, but I want her to hear it if she can. I want her to know I am still here." Earth Command received the feed and made no edits, no speeches. They broadcasted exactly as it was, raw, broken, honest, and across the galaxy billions watched a child who should have been silent speak with a strength forged in suffering. He told them of the lab, of the cold rooms, the machines, the injections, the way the scientists said he was just a test, just a number. He told them about the others, children who never woke up, children who were used for parts, for data, for fuel. He remembered names, faces, screams, and silence. He remembered the alien who cried once and was never seen again. He remembered the fire that finally came, and the black suits that carried him away, not gently, but safely. His story tore through the stars like a blade, slicing through lies and cover-ups. Entire council planets erupted in revolt. Ships turned against their stations. Soldiers refused orders, and civilians marched in the streets, holding the symbol of ashfall drawn in ash on their clothes. Some tried to defend the council, but were drowned out by truth and pain. Kel's words became a weapon more powerful than bombs, more lasting than fire. Juno stood beside him the entire time, not as a warrior, but as a witness, and when the broadcast ended, the child looked at her and asked, "Are they gone now?" She did not answer with words. She simply took his hand and squeezed it, letting him feel the warmth, the pulse, the promise. Far away in the Marshal's command bunker, Earth's true leaders gathered again, and this time there was no debate. The Marshal said, "The Council has lost the right to exist. They have become a wound to the stars, and wounds must be healed or removed." And the others agreed, not with joy, but with grim duty. Messages were sent to the fleets, to the allies, to the worlds who had remained neutral. The next phase would begin, not of fire, but of reckoning. Those who surrendered would be judged, those who resisted would be erased. Ashfall would no longer act alone. Earth itself would now lead, and the galaxy would listen. Kale rested his head on the pillow, his eyes fluttering. But before he fell asleep, he said one more thing to Juno softly and with peace: "Do not stop until the last of them is gone." And she replied, "We won't. Not until every cage is broken and every child is free." The last world. False stars over Threxia once glowed with pride. The capital of the Galactic Council had stood for centuries untouched above judgment, wrapped in silence and power. But now, those same stars flickered under the shadow of something ancient, something unstoppable, something human. The last council world had refused surrender, even after the truth had shattered the galaxy, even after fleets deserted and planets rioted, even after children told stories that made even the bravest warriors tremble. The council believed Earth would hesitate. They believed that humans still cared about law, about diplomacy, about mercy. They were wrong. Marshal Reed stood at the center of Earth's orbital command room above Mars, his eyes fixed on the massive screen, showing Threxia spinning slowly, its towers glowing gold, its oceans calm. But beneath that beauty lay bunkers holding secrets, chambers with bones, data locked behind lies. The Marshal did not speak with anger. He did not raise his voice. He simply looked at the officers before him and said, "Activate Soul Reaper across the void." On the Ashfall ship Vengeance, Juno received the order. She stood alone on the bridge, her team silent behind her. She had seen fire before, she had brought vengeance to many places, but this time it felt different, not heavier, not darker, but final. She pressed her hand against the console, and the hidden weapon systems unlocked. Soul Reaper was not a bomb, not a beam, not a weapon designed to impress. It was a machine of ending, crafted in silence, buried in black codes, built not to win wars, but to erase mistakes. It descended from orbit like a shadow made of hunger and sorrow. It wrapped around Threxia's upper orbit and deployed thousands of thin metallic spines, each one reaching down like fingers toward the planet. The council screamed into the void, demanding parley, offering excuses, promising change, but no human answered them. Not one soldier, not one diplomat, not even a whisper. Because this was not a conversation, this was a memory being corrected. The spines began to pulse, sending energy downward, not explosive, not violent, simply precise. The cities went dark, the towers crumbled, the data centers melted, the council building cracked and collapsed, not from heat, not from shock, but from silence. Entire structures simply stopped existing, as if they were never there. Only one building remained untouched, a medical tower near the coast where a captured child had once been held. Kale watched it all from a secure room within the Vengeance ship, his eyes steady, his breathing calm. He said nothing. As the world below faded like a dream made of pain, Juno stood beside him, not asking if he was ready, because she already knew he was the one who had suffered, the one who had survived, and the one who deserved to see the end. The oceans boiled away, not with fire, but with gravity, twisted by the Reaper. The land broke, the sky cracked, and the planet fell, not in flames, but in silence. When it was over, only ash and rock remained, and the Reaper returned to orbit, waiting for its next order, if there would ever be one. Back on Earth, the Marshal watched as the last reading from Threxia vanished, and then he turned away, not with pride, but with a weight that all warriors carry when justice requires fire. The council no longer existed, not in structure, not in spirit, not even in memory. Only scattered remnants remained, hiding, begging, pretending to be something else. But the galaxy now knew the truth, and the truth burned brighter than any sun. Kale sat quietly As the final message played on the galactic net, his own voice recorded before the strike. He said, "They took everything from me, but Earth gave it back. They broke my body. But humans gave me strength. They erased my name. But now everyone knows it, and I say to those who still hide, do not lie, do not run, do not beg. We are not angry. We are not cruel. We are something far worse. We are the ones who remember. And remembering is what ends you." The message ended, and the galaxy exhaled for the first time in years. Planets that once feared humans now sent messages of respect, messages of alliance, messages of truth. The Reaper returned to its vault. Earth powered down its fleets. The Marshal ordered the end of Ashfall missions, and the soldiers returned home changed but whole. And for the first time in generations, no child cried alone in the dark. No mother wondered if her voice had been heard, because they all knew Earth had listened, Earth had acted, and Earth had finished its promise. Never broken. Years passed, but the memory never faded. The stars above burned the same. The planets kept spinning, but something deep in the galaxy had changed forever. The Galactic Council was gone, not with celebration, but with silence. Its ashes now scattered, its crimes known, its buildings erased from every map, and in its place rose something new. Not an empire, not a throne, not a flag waving in the void, but a single voice, a single story that spread from system to system, from species to species. And in the center of that story stood a boy who had once been called only a number. Kale now stood tall, no longer a victim, no longer afraid. He wore a long dark coat stitched with symbols from 100 worlds, symbols that meant survivor, that meant justice, that meant hope. And beside him stood Juno, now admiral, her armor black and polished, her eyes wiser than ever. Both of them stood at the front of the Grand Assembly, a place not built for power but for peace. Behind them sat leaders from every race that remained, from every planet that had stood against the council or fallen under it and now wanted something different, something honest, something that remembered. The boy stepped forward and the chamber fell quiet. He did not raise his voice. He spoke gently, the way a child speaks when he no longer wants to cry. "I was a shadow. I was pain. I was silence." He said, "You turned away from me. You pretended I did not exist. But Earth did not forget. Earth came for me, not to claim revenge, not to conquer, but to keep a promise they made long before I was born. And that promise was this: no human child will ever be alone in the dark again." And they kept it. The chamber remained silent, but it was not empty. It was full of eyes, full of tears, full of understanding and guilt and change. Kale continued, "I do not ask for your fear. I do not ask for your shame. I ask for your hands, your help, your truth. If we are to build a new galaxy, it cannot be one of silence. It must be one where the smallest voice is heard, where the weakest life is defended, not hidden, not erased, but protected." He looked to the stars on the ceiling, real-time projections of galaxies spinning slowly, and said, "They burned worlds for me, not because I was special, but because I was one of theirs. And now I ask you to be one of ours. Be the voice that speaks when a cry is heard in the dark. Be the fire that warms, not the fire that destroys. And above all, be the kind of people you needed when you were hurting, because somewhere right now, someone is afraid, someone is caged, someone is forgotten, and they are waiting for you." The assembly rose slowly, no applause, no shouting, just a quiet nod from every delegate, from every species. And Kale stepped down, not as a symbol, not as a memory, but as something far more powerful, as a promise made flesh. He walked through the halls of the new Alliance base, people bowing, people stepping aside. But he smiled, not because of respect, but because of what it meant. It meant they saw him not as a ghost, not as a weapon, not as a wound, but as a human. And that word meant something now, because of him, because of Earth, because of what they all had done. Juno caught up to him outside beneath the glass dome, where the stars shone clearly, and said, "You did good, kid." He looked at her with a half smile and said, "We did good." She nodded and looked to the sky, where hundreds of human ships now floated, not in attack, not in defense, but in watch, silent guardians waiting, always ready, just in case the darkness ever returned. Kale asked her, "Do you think they'll keep the peace?" She said, "Maybe not all of them, but enough, and if not, we will be ready." And he looked forward, eyes calm, breath steady, and said, "Then I will be too. I am not a soldier. I am not a weapon. I am a child who was rescued, and now I rescue others." Juno did not reply. She simply stood beside him as the stars kept shining, and the future began, a new chapter written not in pain, not in fire, but in memory and justice and promise. And so the galaxy turned once more, not under fear, but under a vow, and that vow was clear: hurt one human child, and you will answer, not to an army, not to a fleet, not to a flag, but to a people who never forget, who never forgive, who never stop, until every cage is broken and every whisper is answered with light. And that is the day the galaxy learned what it truly means. When humans say we protect our own, stars did not celebrate, they simply watched, as they always had from the beginning, silent and cold, but no longer indifferent because something had changed. Something had awakened in the fabric of the galaxy of fire that would not fade. Not because of rage or revenge, but because of something far deeper. Something older, something human. Kale stood on the cliffside of New Earth, the wind lifting his hair, the sky filled with ships of every kind, not in battle, but in unity. They had come from distant worlds, from former enemies, from those once too afraid to speak, all to be here on the day. The last cage was broken beneath him. On the stone platform stood a single object, a rusted collar once placed around his neck, now shattered, and placed inside a clear case, not to remember his suffering, but to remember the strength it took to survive it. He turned and faced the sea of faces before him, humans and aliens, warriors and survivors, children and elders, all listening to the boy who had become a voice. He raised his hand and silence followed, not out of fear, but out of respect. He said, "Today is not the day we won a war. Today is the day we chose never to forget. Never again will pain be hidden behind silence. Never again will a cry go unanswered. Never again will one of us be taken without fire following after." And he looked to the children in the front row, the ones once locked away, now standing free, and said, "You are not broken. You are the reason the stars are safe again. Because they tried to erase you and failed, and now you shine brighter than their lies ever could." The sky above shimmered as a symbol formed across the atmosphere, a glowing mark only visible from orbit. The sign of ashfall, no longer a name of vengeance, but now a symbol of promise. And Kale lowered his hand and said, "The galaxy did not need rulers. It needed protectors, and now it has them, not in palaces, not in fleets, but in every person who says no more." Then he stepped back, and the people rose, not to cheer, but to stand as one, and behind them the stars burned quietly. But this time they carried the echo of a whisper, a promise that would never be broken, a warning to the cruel and a comfort to the forgotten. And above it all stood Earth, not as conqueror, not as judge, but as the keeper of a vow that shook the stars. When they tortured one child, Earth answered, and when it was done, the stars never forgot. And